From the Diary of Bill Lowie, Sunday, October 25th. Today the company of VC that we had chased unsuccessfully on the 23rd relocated about 4 miles from our compound. We were alerted immediately and carried the same reinforced company of ARVNs to meet them. The results of that all-day Sunday mission are hardly worth repeating. Popi was born on March 16th, 1937, in Abbeville, Georgia, to Effie and Odell, spelled O-D-E-L-L, Lowie. Both were of Scottish, Irish, and English descent. He was the eldest of 7 children, Laverne, James, John, Pat, Brenda, and Pauline. His middle name, Pryor, P-R-Y-O-R, was a tribute to the doctor who delivered him, although when his Social Security card was found a few years ago, it was spelled Pryor, P-R-I-O-R. His early years were spent moving across the South with his family as his parents chased work, eventually settling in Sanford, Florida, where his father worked at Herlong's Dairy. Bill attended Seminole High School, the same high school I attended, but his time there was short. At just 16 years old, he dropped out to help his parents support his siblings, working at a local gas station for a man named Buddy Lake. When he turned 18, inspired by his Uncle Jesse, a World War II veteran, he joined the military. At first, he wasn't certain what he wanted to do, so he completed his basic training for the Army at Fort Benning, ending up in New Jersey soon after he graduated boot camp. In 1956, the Hungarian Revolution erupted as a nationwide revolt against Soviet-imposed policies and control. Sparked by student protest in Budapest on October 23rd, the movement quickly gained momentum, with widespread demands for political reform, freedom from Soviet domination, and the withdrawal of Soviet troops. Intense clashes ensued between Hungarian freedom fighters and Soviet forces, with key moments like the storming of the Hungarian radio building and the toppling of a Stalin statue becoming symbols of resistance. Although Hungary briefly tasted freedom, the revolution was violently suppressed in November when the Soviet Union launched a full-scale military intervention. Thousands lost their lives, and many fled the country as refugees, some of which were sent to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, near Rutgers University and New Brunswick. Popi was sent to this area by the Army to help support the refugees, mostly by helping feed them, peeling potatoes for their meals. He quickly grew to hate Hungarians, since he was bitter that he had to help the refugees and act as a mere chef while in the military. Eventually, while on leave with his friend Bud and waiting at a train station, he met Susan Lutzko, my Meemaw. At first, he was somewhat rude to her, believing her to be a refugee, but his friend thought her friend, Elizabeth, was cute. The girls were too young to go on dates alone, so Popi agreed to accompany Bud on a double date and reluctantly went out with Susan. Surprisingly, they hit it off. Meemaw and Popi dated briefly and got married when she was 16 and Popi was 19. After the wedding, they moved to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where Popi trained to be a paratrooper. Not long after, he became a sergeant and ultimately a drill instructor. Their first son, William John Lowie, was born on May 2, 1958, in Fort Riley, Kansas. After that, Popi was stationed in Munich, Germany for 3 years, where he rose to the rank of Master Sergeant. He even participated in war games and, in one memorable instance, captured Elvis Presley during a 1960 exercise. After his time in Germany, Popi was stationed at Fort Ord, California, with the 11th Brigade before briefly getting out of the Army, but ultimately joining up again. That was when he went to Fort Rucker, Alabama for helicopter training, earning the rank of Warrant Officer 1. Their second son was born on February 16, 1962, in Somerville, New Jersey, while Meemaw was staying with her sister, Min, during a transition between assignments. Their third son arrived on October 12, 1963, at Fort Benning, while Popi was in the middle of a training exercise. He came out before Popi could get to the hospital. In September 1964, Bill Lowie was deployed to Vietnam. He arranged for Susan and the boys to move to Conway, Florida, where they lived near his parents while he served overseas. After returning from Vietnam, Popi was expected to train new pilots while his brother served. When his brother got back, he was going to be sent back over. This caused him to leave the military because he didn't want to get deployed again, and he was uncomfortable with the idea of sending young pilots to war without adequate experience, since he felt like he was rushing them through training. By the time their fourth child was born, on August 26, 1968, in Orlando, Florida, Popi began flying for Citrus helicopters. He spent his days flying over orange groves, spraying trees with insecticides and chemicals. After some years in the agricultural industry, he switched gears once again and started working on a tuna boat for Starkist Tuna, where he piloted helicopters to locate schools of fish. This work took him to places like Costa Rica, Papua New Guinea, and the west coast of Africa. His time on the boats lasted for about 5 or 6 years, though a close call where he almost crashed his helicopter into the ocean ultimately made him decide it was time to come home for good. It's often said that while on the boat, he read vigorously and enjoyed his time not speaking to anyone, since all of the other workers were South American, and he proudly spoke no Spanish. There's even a notorious instance, often referenced by my family, where he got arrested by the government of Papua New Guinea in a dispute over international boundaries for fishing. He was detained and said he felt hopeless when his judge had a bone pierced through his nose. He also had to get his appendix removed once in West Africa and recalled having no sedative or anesthesia, and the doctor had to shoo chickens out of the operating room while he got emergency surgery. Following the tuna boat, Popi struggled with alcoholism, while working odd jobs at toll booths and convenience stores. Meemaw worked at places like Past Performance and Pet Palace, which were odd specialty stores in Orlando. At one point, she even owned a tanning salon. They lived in various locations, including a house off Orange Blossom Trail that most of us fondly remember, and a duplex near SeaWorld. In the final chapter of their lives, they moved to McRae, Georgia, when Popi's health began to fail due to COPD. He passed away in September of 2012 after a long struggle with his health, and though he had spent his final years in Georgia, he had always hated moving away from the hustle and bustle of Florida. He had to be in touch with the world, as he would say. Popi's life was filled with adventure, service, and love for his family. It wasn't until his first son was born that he started sending his paychecks in the army to Meemaw instead of his own mom to help take care of his siblings. He was a man of many hobbies, which included building model ships, solving crossword puzzles, and watching Univision shows just for the beautiful women. He loved Bing Crosby, Dean Martin, and Celine Dion, and every Christmas, the only gift he wanted was an ornament from Things Remembered, knowing the proceeds would go to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Though he didn't speak much, I always enjoyed being around him. He had funny little quirks like most grandfathers do. I saw him at what might have been his best, at least the best he could have been after he sobered up. I'm thankful I got that. The photo I chose for today depicts Popi looking at the camera, likely standing in the U.S.-held airfield in Vinh Long. He was 27 in this photograph. I'm 27 today. He's got a lot more wrinkles. Maybe it's the cigarettes. Maybe it's the long life he's already lived. Who knows? I'm Alex Lowie, and I hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode of Dearest Suzie, and receiving messages from the past that my Popi wrote exactly 60 years ago. I sincerely appreciate your time and interest. Please consider following the podcast on your preferred platform, and if you're enjoying it, I kindly ask that you take the time to rate the show and leave a review. Also, please follow the project on YouTube, X, and Instagram. All likes, comments, shares, and reviews will help grow the reach of this story. The links for these things should be in the description of this episode. Please feel free to email me at dearestsuziepodcast@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to say. I'd love to chat or to hear about your stories as well. Thank you for listening, and God bless.